Hello and welcome. It is so good to have you with me today for this mini class on iridology, where we're going to talk about stress, depression, anxiety, ADD, ADHD, and contraction furrows. This is an interactive webinar, and so I encourage you to drop comments in the chat box or in the Facebook group or on the Instagram chat, however you are joining me. And you'll find the more you give, the more you'll get. So play with me in my sandbox and I will gladly give you even more. So good to have you joining me today, and so good to see familiar faces and familiar names as well as new names too. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'd love to know who you are, where you're from. That's always interesting to see how international, how global these webinars actually are. I'd also like to know if you are a health coach, if you've got anatomy and physiology under your belt. That just helps me to know how deep I can go in our session today. Just by way of introduction, my name is Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a certified level 3 iridology instructor through the International Iridology Practitioners Association. There are only 5 level 3 instructors worldwide, and I worked hard to be one of them. So I'm really, really glad to be with you today and to share some of the information with you that is so relevant to the stress levels people are facing in this day and age. I got into holistic healing over 4 decades ago because I had health problems that the medical world seemed to be unable to address. At that time, I was dating a young man whose mom was into holistic health, and the things she suggested worked. And so that was the beginning not only of my adventures and foray and desire to learn and to study holistic healing. It was also the beginning of a beautiful relationship, and my husband, or that guy, and I did get married, and we have been married ever since, which is very cool. In those years, I've written many books that I've self-published and self-distributed, including Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, The Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and Level 2, and the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology Textbook. That's the book we use for the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System for a Health Professionals course. I've also designed and taught many courses. Early on, I was teaching a lot of practical herbal courses where we taught students how to use herbs that they could buy commercially prepared in the health food store, how to recognize what a combination was good for, and just practical use in the home. I've also designed and taught biokinesiology and color therapy levels 1 and 2 to go with the books I wrote. For a few years, I was a certified prenatal educator, and so I designed and taught prenatal classes. Fertility, prenatal work, postnatal work, that's all just exciting things. I love working with that childbearing year and with fertility and PCOS. I also teach the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System course, which is a course that includes all of the curriculum required by the International Iridology Practitioners Association to prepare my students for certification with that organization. So my course is approved by IPA. Just as a tickler, our next live course will be starting on January 12th, and I'm going to give you details on that at the end of our time together today. Just a little bit more though, if you are a health professional, maybe you're a herbalist or a nutrition coach, a naturopath, a chiropractor, a medical doctor, an RN, and you've got anatomy and physiology under your belt already, which many of those categories, many of those professions do have, then you are eligible to speak with me about the Dynamic Iridology course. Stay tuned because I'm going to have a special invitation for you. So if you want to add iridology to your practice, we should have a conversation. If you're not a health professional, or if you don't have that anatomy and physiology course under your belt already, then reach out to me and I will connect you to the course that I like my students to take. Now, it's not a course I teach, and it's through another school. I don't get commission for referring people, but it's a course that I really believe in. It's a school that I really believe in, and so I send my prospective students there to get A&P done before they come back to me for iridology. Let's look at our first eye. let's talk about constitutional iridology and contraction furrows. So when we are doing constitutional iridology, we are looking at the eye as a whole, and we're understanding how the markings work together. We're not looking for an individual marking, because that is the slice and dice method of taking care of people. We want to look at the whole, at the person's constitution. So as we look at this, we are looking at these rings that are coming around the eye. That is our topic of conversation today. What are some other things you have seen these rings called? We're going to call them contraction furrows today. What have you seen them called? Nerve rings, and cramp rings, stress rings. Those are all things these have been called. Good work. Excellent. We're going to debunk some myths about these rings, but first we need to look at the anatomy of the eye. So when we look at an iris, we are going to cut the iris right here to look at the iris from on that cut edge. Look at the cut end. So if you imagine taking a donut, cutting it in half, and now we're going to look at the end of the donut that has two circles, but we're really just going to look at one side of that. We're going to look at one circle at the end of a cut donut. I hope that made sense for you. This is what we're looking at there. The pupil would be here. This is that side of the iris that we were just looking at. The sclera would be attached here. We're going to focus right on this. A contraction furrow is a crease or a dip in the surface of the iris, in that anterior border layer and pushing down into some of the stromal tissues. Now this diagram is not completely accurate because the posterior epithelium will have a parallel dip in it. What I want you to imagine is you've got several layers of fabric stacked up. If you take that fabric and you squish it together, the fabric has to do this in order to fit into that shorter space. If we then take that fabric and stretch it out, we can flatten out those peaks and valleys. If that fabric was squished for a length of time, or if we did this thousands of times, eventually those creases would become permanent. It would be like creases on your blue jeans, like right in front of the thigh, where if you are into ironing your blue jeans, which I did as a teenager, you can never get rid of those creases. They're perma creases, right? That's what a contraction furrow is. Another great analogy for this is an accordion. If you've got your accordion and it's fully extended, the fabric pleats are flattened out. But when you squish it together, those pleats become deeper. So imagine what the pupil does. As the dilator and sphincter muscles do their job, as the dilator muscle does its job, let's start there, and it contracts, that opens the pupil, but the contracting of the dilator muscle makes the iris tissue squeeze together. When the sphincter muscle does its job and it contracts, it closes the pupil, that stretches out the iris tissue, that's going to flatten out the contraction furrows. When someone has contraction furrows, it does not mean they are under stress. It does not mean they are stressed out. It does mean that their predisposition is to be sympathetic dominant, that they are more likely to respond with fight, flight, or freeze when presented with something that they consider to be challenging. So when a person is under stress, the pupils dilate. That causes the iris tissue to compress, but it also tells us they're working in fight, flight, or freeze. There are lots of different types of contraction furrows. We're not going to get into all of them today. That's a part of a 2-hour class in the Dynamic Iridology Assessment System program. But today we're just going to focus on the general understanding of them. So what we know is that contraction furrows increase the risk of pain and spasms, and they suggest this person burns through their nerve nutrients much more quickly. So I want to know, what do you think are the nerve nutrients? What are the specific nutrients that the nervous system needs to function well? B vitamins? Yeah, absolutely. And vitamin C, fantastic. That's often the forgotten one, so good work. And calcium and magnesium, brilliant. Those are the 4 critical nerve nutrient families that we need to be aware of when we are working with someone who is sympathetic dominant. Now, again, contraction furrows actually give us more information about personality, but we will get more into that in the actual full-blown course. We don't have time to do all of the details today. So let's look at some eyes. The next 3 images we're going to look at are the same person, the same day, the same eye, the same camera. What we've changed from one image to the next is the shutter speed and the light settings so that we could manipulate the size of the pupil. In this image, the camera was set to a very fast shutter speed, which reduces the amount of light hitting the subject. This is what this client's eyes looked like in normal room lighting. Now, if I didn't know her better, I would think she was stoned, that she was on some kind of drugs, but she wasn't. She's a very clean living young lady, but she also tends to be a little high strung and pretty anxious most of the time. So what we need to be aware of is that when we have frontal lighting, which means we've got 2 lights coming right from the front, that's going to fill in any valleys of contraction furrows. So we don't see contraction furrows easily on this image. There's maybe a little bit of one here, and we can see hint of, there's some hints of some here, but we don't see them really, really well. So in the next light, or in the next image rather, brighter light, still frontal, a much slower shutter speed, so we've got more light hitting the eye. Can we see the contraction furrows? We can see little hints of them, but certainly not very well. That is one of the drawbacks of frontal lighting. Frontal lighting lets us see lots of other details, but it fills in those valleys of the contraction furrows. So what we want to do is come at this eye with side lighting. Now, actually, I do frontal and side lighting on all of my clients because each type of lighting lets me see different features. Do you see the difference here? Same lighting, same camera. Change that. Same camera, same person, same eye, but side lighting. Notice we've turned off one of the lights, and now we can cast shadows. Can you see the layers and layers and layers of contraction furrows we've got through this eye? So what does this tell us? This tells us that she internalizes her stress deeply. If she's well nourished, she can handle that. If she's not well nourished, she is a drama queen. I say that lovingly because she's actually not a client, she's my daughter. Her diet, most of the time, in spite of being my daughter, is high carb, no supplements, and lots of junk food. You already know that that does not support a healthy nervous system. It actually pulls the rug right out from under you. Now, the eyes don't tell us that she's under stress. It tells us that her predisposition is to react strongly in stressful situations. So when we see this in the eyes, when we see these contraction furrows, we know that what we need to do is nourish her well as she'll let us, so that her body does not have to have these really extreme reactions when she's under stress. So again, my experience is that when we see contraction furrows like this and like this, we've got so many in here, her risk of overreacting to normal events of life is significant. So better nourishment would be helpful, and learning some stress coping techniques would also be a really good idea. These are the eyes of a 4-year-old child, and I'm showing these to you, frontal lighting, and notice how clear her contraction furrows are with frontal lighting. Because the question is always, are these inherent or did she put them there herself? These are inherent, and let me show you one way we know. This is a 2-generation study. This is her dad. This is her mom. This is that little girl again. So her dad has lots of contraction furrows that are very visible with frontal lighting. Her mom has lots of contraction furrows, and so their daughter has lots of contraction furrows. Now, both the mom and the dad have had some serious challenges with anxiety and depression. until they got their act together, cleaned up their diet, and started taking supplements. And they've both made some really valuable decisions in their life. The first decision they made was for each of them was to leave careers that were high stress, good money, but were destroying their quality of life. They made decisions to take jobs to become careers that would support their lifestyle, which they wanted to be a family, they wanted to have family time, they wanted to have energy left to do things together. They have both also studied to be life coaches, and the mom is actually starting her life coaching business. So what they do with their daughter, and what they've done for many years, is because this daughter is now 7, when the daughter is having a challenge, they work it through with her. They model really good coping and stress management strategies with her. They talk about how she's feeling. They talk about the choices she has to change the situation. They're doing a brilliant job of giving this little girl tools to actually help her manage her stress so she doesn't need to go through some of the things her parents have gone through. These are the eyes of a 2-year-old girl. She's a 3rd-generation client. So I took care of her grandma when her grandma was having her mom. And I took care of the mom when she was getting ready to have this little girl. This little girl's name is Violet. Mom brought Violet to see me, and she said, I don't know what's going on here. She is not the sweet little girl she used to be. She has meltdowns. She can scream for 6 hours straight without a break. So one of the things that we needed to do was we needed to assess the diet. Now, I know the family well because I've worked with the mom. I know the dad. I know the grandma. I know the sister who's 2 years older than this little girl. I've worked with aunts and uncles and cousins from this family. I know the family well. This is, again, a family that is loving and supportive, not just the nuclear family, but the extended family. I know the nutrition is superior. I always say I want to live with them because they eat better than I do, right? There's a lot going really well for them. And so as we looked at this little girl's diet, the diet, according to North American standards, is stellar. It is brilliant, with one minor exception. This little girl would eat fruit 24 hours a day if she could. So she was getting a lot of fruit, not so many vegetables. Everything's organic, but even that much fruit can be a problem. So we had mom reduce the fruit down to 1 half-cup serving a day and to replace all the other fruit with vegetables. We also suggested, because we see these contraction furrows, that this little girl might be burning through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. Now, it's easier to get a lot of your B vitamins from your leafy greens than it is from your fruit, right? So by changing to more vegetables in the diet and reducing the fruit, we were enhancing the amount of nutrients she was getting that was specific to what she needs. We also added a liquid vitamin B complex to her. Now, it was interesting. It did not take very long. And literally about a week later, the mom sent me an email and said, this is amazing. I have my little girl back. When she's upset about something, I can hug her. We can talk it through. We can reason it through at a 2-year-old level. And she calms down quickly and we get on with the day. So again, so important to understand not just the marking. The marking only tells us a story if we have background information as to symptoms, as to current nutritional status, supplements they're taking, what's going on in their world. We need all of that to understand what is important in the eye. Here's what one of my graduates from the Dynamic Iridology course said about the course, and we're going to look at some more eyes as well, so stay with me. Allison said, I have extensive experience as a nurse's aide. When I decided to study holistic health healing at Wild Rose College, I needed to take an iridology course to complete my diploma work. My classmates had taken iridology by correspondence and found it to be very difficult. I did some research and found Judith's course and am so glad I did. Judith's teaching is professional and makes it so easy to learn as she takes time to answer every question that is asked, has great colorful slides, and reviews every week. Extra practice slides and recordings of every class makes studying and reviewing so easy. There's a MeWe group for questions, comments, assessments, and just keeping in touch between weeks. Judith is a wealth of knowledge and a fantastic mentor. I love this course, and I know you will too. Now, Angela Hodges is a current student. She's a dental hygienist, and was only about halfway through the course when she posted this in our social media group. I asked her, how are you finding Iridology is helpful to the work that you're doing, either with clients or with family and friends? And she said, I look forward to opening my own wellness practice one day, but have been able to help family and friends with this information. Again, only halfway through the course. I also can slightly use a little to help parents with their children's diets and health issues at my dental office for now. Again, she's a hygienist. She looks in mouths, but she's right there. She's seeing eyes as well. And she's able to use what she sees to feed information to the parents of her young clients to give them a little leg up in working with their children's health. This is one of my clients, a 10-year-old boy who came to me. His parents brought him in because his teacher at school had asked for the school psychologist to assess him for ADD, ADHD. When I hear that, I always want to know two things before we jump to that conclusion. Number one, does this child's eyes track properly? Because if they do not track properly, then he will not be able to read well, and anything that is a written instruction means he's going to be distracted. It's not going to make sense. He's going to be asking other people for help, or he's just going to get frustrated and give up. The other thing I want to know is he a kinesthetic learner? If we let him keep his hands busy with a little quiet toy at his desk or doodling and drawing at his desk while the teacher is presenting information, will he absorb that information? And if he is, he's a kinesthetic learner, and the auditory and visual styles are not going to be as helpful for him. In his case, we pressed forward because his parents were very concerned. He was in the 5th grade, and they wanted to get things on track before he got into junior high, which here is the 7th grade. So we certainly wanted to consider, did he need B vitamins? Did he need calcium? Did he need magnesium? But what about his nutrition? What was his nutrition like? As far as North America goes, it wasn't bad. Again, solid family. And breakfast was typically boxed cereal. At least there was breakfast, right? Or a white flour pancake with brown sugar pancake syrup on it. But often there was no protein. Lunch was typically a ham and cheese on white bread with fruit roll-ups and a box of something to drink that was sugary and, artificially colored. Supper was often I won't say fast food, but it had to be quickly prepared, usually at home, because the children have extracurricular activities and parents were tag teaming the chauffeuring of the children. And so looking at that, we realized that one of the key things was for him, blood sugar imbalance. If the blood sugars are imbalanced, it impacts the nervous system. So we focused on getting protein at every meal, which meant that breakfast could be a whole grain pancake with real maple syrup and an egg or two, right? Lunch could be the ham and cheese, but we wanted real cheese, not processed cheese. We would prefer that it was ham that got sliced at home rather than packaged sandwich meat. We would prefer that it be on a whole grain, multi-grain bread instead of on white bread. That there be maybe a piece of fruit and a little box of vegetables at lunchtime and a bottle of water in a really fancy water bottle so that he would be cool. Supper suggestions, we talked about crock pot ideas. We talked about things that could be batch cooked and frozen, so it was easy to pop in the oven. But again, focusing on protein and veggies. And if they had to do a drive-through, what would be the options? Could there be a salad with some meat in it and a burger, but no French fries, no pop? Could we do things that would just bump things up a notch? And those were very practical. This family did very well. We did add B vitamins, we did add calcium and magnesium, we did add vitamin C to him, and we saw some amazing results. Now, we also need to remember that if the blood sugars are unstable, it's going to unbalance the adrenal glands. And if the adrenal glands are unstable, that's going to augment ADD and ADHD. Every sound, everything that happens in the classroom is going to become a crisis that needs attention if the adrenals are not functioning well. So we wanted to settle the nervous system and build the adrenals. So, we could consider using omegas, maybe some hemp hearts for that to pick up omegas and calcium and magnesium and B vitamins. We could consider using some lemon balm or some chamomile to calm the nervous system. Maybe we could use some astragalus or some ashwagandha to build the adrenals. Right? So again, crafting the recommendations based on what the individual person needed. Now, with this person, we also needed to consider what was his liver doing, because liver takes the carbs and it processes them to make either cholesterol and or to balance the blood sugars, right? Liver helps pancreas balance blood sugars. And so we needed to consider, did we need to do liver support? His eyes suggest that yes, we probably do need to. And we need that cholesterol to make neurotransmitters, right? So carbs go to cholesterol, go to neurotransmitters if the liver is working properly. If it's not working properly, we end up with a little bit of a mess. And so we needed to do a bit of liver support. We chose to do that mostly through dietary choices. When I first learned iridology, we were taught that 3 complete nerve rings going all the way around meant the person was headed into or coming out of a nervous breakdown. We now know that is not accurate at all. This is a 12-year-old boy, and he is actually graduating high school this year. He's now 17 or 18. Back here when we did these and all through junior high and high school, very physically active, plays lots of sports very competitively, also extremely academic. He usually takes the top academic athlete award in his grade in his school. Now, he's got these contraction furrows, which means that he can be very focused, right? He can put his head down and get the work done. He likes to play hard. That's where his sports come in. And he needs to relax hard as well. And his parents are very diligent about supporting him in not just his academics and his athletics, but in making sure that he has downtime. For example, he's my grandson. We were over at their house recently. He was in a volleyball tournament, and their house is just two blocks away from the high school. So between the tournament games, his parents had like 5 or 6 of his friends over. So for lunch, really healthy vegetarian chili, really, really great. And, the kids played in the basement. They played video games, right? So parents are very supportive here. So the important thing in this family, they don't take a lot of supplements, but the mom is very diet conscious. She makes sure that her 2 sons and her husband get adequate protein and really good quality protein. Food is prepared from scratch. And, there is a little bit of junk food in the house, but the bulk of the food is good quality food. That's going to provide a lot of good nerve nutrients. This is his younger brother, 2 years younger. And this young man decided when he was about 10 or 12 years old, he was going to be vegetarian. Now notice these contraction furrows. He's also a really good student and a really good athlete. He often takes the top grade, top athlete awards for his grade. And so when he decided he was going to be vegetarian, his mother said, okay, well, I'll be vegetarian with you, but we're going to do this right. So she's done the research and she makes sure that they have adequate plant protein in their meals. There are some days where the whole family eats strictly vegetarian. And there are some days where it's mostly vegetarian and she and this one boy are vegetarian, but there's a meat side dish for her husband and the older son. Right? And so by feeding her children this way, even though they've got contraction furrows, by helping them to learn life skills of you can work hard and you can play hard and you're going to need your downtime to recuperate, she is teaching them very valuable skills for managing their nervous systems. Everything that we recommend is not necessarily a pill or a supplement, just saying. Selena McKenzie is a current student. She is about halfway through. Actually, when she wrote this for me, she was 4 weeks into the 20-week program. She said, I just wanted to take a moment of your time to put a huge thank you out there. I've been learning so much in the first few weeks of class, and it's been a true blessing. As an educator in my field of study, I feel as though I've taken so many continued education courses, and I really appreciate your detailed course. I particularly enjoy being able to review the mini videos throughout my busy work week. I've always learned best by audio, and I really feel that it's the glue in your course for me. I'm super excited to see what's in store in the coming weeks. I'm so looking forward to being able to build this amazing process into my practice. I think it'll be well received by all of my clients, young and old. She's a massage therapist, a yoga instructor, and she has infrared sauna in her studio as well. Here's another eye. This is a woman who was in her mid-40s when we were working together. She had a lot of stress. Her marriage was iffy at the time, and it went on to a messy divorce. But the stress even before that was very on and off. Over the course of about 10 or 15 years that we worked together before we took these photos, the doctors would run MRIs, and one would come back and they'd say, yeah, you've got MS. A few years later they would do, and they go, no, we don't think you do. A few years later it was, yeah, you do. A few years later it's, no, you don't. But she had lots of symptoms, and they weren't pinpointing anything. They weren't helping her in any way. So tons of stress. She's got contraction furrows. So we know the B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium. With the possibility of MS, we certainly want essential fatty acids in there. And so what we need to remember, we don't have time to look at everything today, is that every other marking in her eyes can add more information to what the contraction furrows teach us. So we need to understand her diet, her lifestyle, and we need to understand how the different markings impact each other so that we can ask the right questions, gather the best information, and create the most effective step-by-step protocol for her. This is a 24-year-old male, and when he's not a client of mine, he's actually one of my sons-in-law, and I prefer just to call him a son, right? I don't like the in-law add on to that. So he's one of my boys from another mother. He's had a long history of depression and anxiety that started in his teen years. He's often on medication. He's got a poor diet, very high in refined carbs. He has a lazy lifestyle, very little physical activity. And so when we look at that and we assess that he's got contraction furrows that are very visible with frontal lighting, which means they're probably pretty deep, we know he needs more B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, magnesium, possibly some omegas. He will not take supplements. How do we work with this? Well, the easiest way is to go through my daughter, right? Who has, to a large extent, adapted their eating patterns to what he wanted, but as he has struggled with his health, she has been slowly migrating the diet back to what she knows is much healthier. So when they first met, he ate no vegetables at all. And now he loves vegetables. When we have them for dinner and I'm serving vegetables, I know I'd better make extra because I know he will want at least 2 good servings. So this is good. And that's beneficial because if we can get him to use his leafy greens, we are going to get good quality B vitamins out of there if we've been gentle with the vegetable preparation, right? And so, again, we can use the diet, and that's what my daughter is doing. She's really reduced the amount of soda they have in their family. She's increased the amount of vegetables they eat. She makes sure he gets good quality proteins 3 times a day to keep the blood sugars stable, which keeps the adrenal glands happier, which means that he's not unbalancing his sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems quite as badly, right? So we see that upward trend by figuring out where is the beginning of this cycle. The eyes don't tell us he's under stress. Again, they teach us about his predisposition to internalize stress deeply and respond very strongly in stressful situations. So there is so much more to teach about contraction furrows, placement, where the endpoints are, even the shape. Do the contraction furrows cross or touch one another? There are so many more details to learn or to teach you about this, but that is for the full-on course. One more student said this: I took an iridology course from another school a few years ago, but I was left feeling inadequately trained with no confidence in the material or my abilities to perform accurate assessments. Judith Cobb, on the other hand, is a wonderful instructor. She presents the material in this course in a concise, organized way. She clearly answers every question asked, no matter how trivial the student may think it is. Judith structures the classes in a way that makes them incredibly interesting. Clarification is clearly established through her instruction, discussion, and student participation. Upon completion of Judith's course, I feel very confident in my abilities and excited to offer iridology services to my client. This course is an incredible value, highly recommended. Just a little bit of information about the dynamic iridology assessment system for health professionals, and then I'm going to extend an invitation to you. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is the only live, online, fully mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. Now, you heard in Joyce Lee's testimony about how she had studied iridology elsewhere, but didn't really learn how to use it and felt really inadequate with it until she did the Dynamic Iridology course. The purpose of the course is to teach holistic practitioners how to use iridology and integrate it with what they already know about aromatherapy or nutrition or herbology so that they can stop creating client protocols in unpaid overtime. So many practitioners see the client, gather information, take that information and spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours of their own time creating protocols and then email that back to the client. But those hours spent creating protocols are usually hours they're not getting paid for. Very draining work to do that. When we create our protocols in our client sessions, a couple of things happen. Number one, you have to limit the amount of information you're giving. If you take 4 hours to create a protocol, you're giving your client too much information. So by getting your protocols created while you're with your client, you give less information, but you give more relevant information so that it is information that is specific to what they need to do next to bump their health up one more notch. By doing that, you create programs that your clients can actually use and implement, right, and be successful with. And as they do that, each step of the way, they implement, they go, whoa, this is working. They want more. They want to know, well, what would it take to get up one more level? They come back, you refine their program, take them up one more notch. And what you're doing is helping them to create new habits that will help them to be healthy for the longer term. That is how I create multi-generation clients. Grandmothers, mothers, children, aunts, uncles, cousins, right, is by building programs and getting results so that my clients can continue to experience good things rather than snowballing them with too much information that they can't do, that they can't get started with, so they just walk away from it. So by creating our programs in our client sessions, and that's what we teach you how to do using iridology, it increases client compliance, it increases client success, and it increases long-term retention. The next go around of dynamic iridology is starting on January 12th. I only enroll people by speaking with them personally because I want to make sure of a few things. Number one, that you've got anatomy and physiology under your belt, because we go deep. We're not just learning to identify markers. We're learning how the markers work with each other, how the information they give us teaches us what questions to ask, how that correlates back to the client's symptoms and the client's goals, and then how do you use all of that to create protocols. So I teach the whole implementation process in here, and I need to know you've got anatomy and physiology under your belt for us to do that. If you don't, then reach out to me on social media, and I will connect you with the A&P course that I like my students to have when they're coming to me. If you've already got A&P, great, we'll work with what you've got. The second reason for the call is we need to make sure that this course is going to take you where you want to go. I've had some people want to learn iridology thinking they could do it strictly as an online business, and that's really hard. It doesn't work well. And so I want to make sure that this is actually going to help you meet your goals in your business. Where are you now? Where do you want to go? Will iridology help you get there? If yes, we are golden. And then, if you got A&P and this is the right fit, then I will invite you to enroll. And only then will we talk about tuition, will we talk about payment plans, and we'll talk about all of the extra support that is built into the program, everything that is designed to help you become successful with iridology and to prepare you for certification if that is a part of your vision as well. So I really hope that you will reach out to me to talk about this course one-on-one to see if this is a good fit for you. Now, I want you to remember, I only accept 10 students in each student group, right? So there will only ever be 10 students in your class time with you. That's the cutoff point, because I want to make sure that you get the attention that you need, that you get the mentoring and the coaching that you need in order to be highly successful with this. So when those 10 spots are filled for the January 12th date, then you have to wait for the next go round. And so reach out to me. Let's talk about this. Let's see if this could be a good fit for you. And if it is, I'll invite you to join me. I look forward to speaking with you soon. Make good use of that link, tinyurl.com slash dynamic iridology insight. Have a good one. We'll talk soon. Bye for now.